I'm Crandall, Diehl, and my first contact with Agnes was at the old Met where she was staging, she was mounting, I should say, Fall River Legend. It was a vintage year, vintage season for ballet theater, because in addition to Fall River Legend, Shadow of the Wind by Tudor was being created. Billy the Kid by Eugene Loring was being revived. Balanchine's Theme and Variations was being created. It was busy time backstage for everybody. First at the old Met, and then later in the spring season at the City Center. I was not cast in Fall River Legend. I was working in the other three that I've mentioned. And I checked the bulletin board one night when I was going home and noticed that I was called for Fall River Legend the next day. And that was very odd indeed. Most of the rest of the company had already gone. I couldn't ask any questions. And I showed up for rehearsal the next morning. The stage manager handed me a sheet of paper, a single sheet of paper with some text on it. And I was introduced to Agnes, and she said, I want you to look at this, and I'll call you in a few minutes. It turned out that it was about 15 minutes. I was at that time primarily an actor, and I was known as a quick study. And I studied it and knew it. She called me back in 15 minutes, and she said, have you looked at it? And I said, yes. She said, do it for me, please. And I held the paper here in case I needed it. And I started out, the jurors on their oath present. And I went through the whole thing without looking at the paper. It lasted about a minute and a half, I think. And she said, all right, study it a little bit more. If you do it, you'll be doing it here at the Met with a full orchestra in the pit and no microphones. So I went to the side and watched the rest of the rehearsal. The ballet was almost completely set at that point. I discovered, well, I don't want to get ahead of myself. I came back and she said, can you get over the orchestra with it now? I said, yes, indeed, Miss De Mille. The jurors on their oath present. And I did the whole thing at that level. And she said, very nice, we will use you. That was Agnes. Few words, but very terse, succinct words. I have other stories later on that lean on that fact about Agnes. Few words at a time.
You know, I met Agnes through her letters, and they weren't to me. They were to my teacher in California, and her name was Carmelita Marachi. Oh, yes. Thank you. I agree. They were both formidable, and they had a love-hate thing going on. And Carmelita used to read Agnes's letters to us in class. She was very political, and so was Agnes. And they would fight in their letters. And I grew up, I was 12 years old, 13 at most, and I was hearing this banter. And Carmelita, prior to Carmelita, my studies as a ballet dancer was all classical and all placed, and you know, you never did anything outside the box. And then I came to Carmelita, and she said, you know, if you're going to dance for Agnes De Mille ever, you'll have to learn how to slide. So she would give slides across the room. And when I went to New York, and my first encounter with Agnes was, funny enough, had to do with Fall River Legend, because I auditioned for Lucia Chase, and she said, well, you're a very nice dancer, but you're a little too small for the corps de ballet, so I don't think we'll be using you. And that was the end of that audition. And then I got a phone call maybe 5 days later. Christine, we're going to South America and we're doing Fall River Legend. And I need somebody who's little, who can act, who has dark hair, because Lupe Serrano is going to do Lizzie. And it's got to be somebody smaller than Lupe. So come back, let Agnes De Mille see you, and if she likes you, then you'll come to South America with us. So I thought, I've got it made. I know how to slide. You know, I'll be able to do this. So I went to the audition. There was no sliding. Lizzie Borden, as a child, it was a dramatic part, and she said to Lucia, take her. She's going to do the part. And that's how I got into ballet theater, and that's how the association began. And there are many more stories, as we all have, but I thought it was so interesting that there you were with the Fall River Legend, and here I sit on this night with that same connection, and that's how it all began. So, very fun.
I first met Agnes De Mille at an audition for Quamina when I was 16 or 17 years old. I went to the audition not expecting to get it, but just for the experience, my teacher said. So we got through the dance part, and then we had to sing. She wanted me to sing an African song. I was born in Queens and raised in Brooklyn. I knew a Haitian song. So I started to sing that, and she stopped me. She said, I can't hear her. Her voice is going up in the fly. So the whole setup moved. And I started again, and she stopped me. I still can't hear. This isn't good for them. I won't be able to. We moved again. By this time, I was shaking. I was no good. We moved again. I started again. Third time she stopped me. I was 16. I picked up my bag and said, I don't need this. And I marched out. And about 4 or 5 years later, I got a call. Agnes De Mille wanted to see me for an audition for the 4 Marys. And when I got there, I got it, but I was to understudy all of the Marys. And they were Judith Jamison, Cleo Quitman, Carmen de la Vallade, and Glory Van Scott. And Paul. I had to know what he was doing, too. After that, she called another couple of years later, and I joined our Heritage Dance Theater, and because a dancer got injured, they needed somebody that could play a saxophone. Well, I had played the clarinet, and so I had 3 days after not playing for 6 or 7 years to get in shape to play the saxophone. I ended up being rolled across the stage in a red and white cheerleader's costume and a white Stetson hat, playing The Eyes of Texas Are Upon You on a piano. Some other things happened after that, but that's about it.